So our guest today is Michael Pollan, who's a food activist, an author, and a journalist, and he's recently come out with a book called Food Rules. And thank you very much for being with us.
Sure, Tim. Good to be here.
First question, Catherine Gilmore from Seattle, Washington asks, your maxim, eat food, less of it, mostly plants, seems to have so much momentum at present, and rightly so. How can we help ensure this approach to eating is widely adopted and doesn't become just another passing fad?
Well, first, let me just correct the language a little bit. It's eat food, not too much, mostly plants.
Okay.
As a writer, I'm kind of sensitive to the rhythms of it as well as the content. And, you know, it's a very simple advice, yet they're very challenging to people. And the reason is they're challenging is we exist in an environment, and the choices before us are shaped by institutions such as the government's agricultural policies, corporations and their marketing strategies, food scientists and their genius at manipulating us with food science. So doing something as simple as eating real food has become challenging. And what I'm trying to do in Food Rules is kind of cut through the complexity of both the marketing and the science to just point out, look, this is food and this is what I call an edible food-like substance. And if you can make that distinction, it then becomes a lot easier.
Can you please tell us what your current diet is, and if it's not vegetarian, why not?
Well, that's a very good question. I still eat meat. I'm a carnivore, but I eat a lot less meat. I've spent so much time on feedlots and confinement hog operations that I can't, in good conscience and with good appetite, eat industrial feedlot meat. So I eat meat from small farms, meat I get at the farmer's market, grass-fed beef. And when you eat meat that way, it's a little harder to find and it costs more money. So with the result that you don't end up eating meat every day. To reduce your meat consumption by 20% is the equivalent of trading in your gas-guzzling sedan for a Prius. So I'm all in favor of incremental steps in this matter. I have enormous respect for vegetarians and vegans because they've thought through the consequences of their food choices. But I think there are good reasons to eat meat, good environmental reasons. What we need is a more diversified agriculture, and when agriculture really is working, you have animals on farms as well as plants. And we're not going to keep animals on farms unless we're eating them. So I do believe if you've got a good diversified farm system, there are ways to eat meat that are good for you and good for the environment.
It's kind of a follow-up question. Kirsten Hagforth from Ketchum, Idaho asks, what's your guiltiest pleasure and how do you rationalize it?
You know, I like French fries. And I probably shouldn't eat them very often. And I actually came up with a rule to help me with that, which is eat all the junk food you want as long as you cook it yourself. People made fried chicken when they were entertaining. It wasn't an everyday food. But now, of course, with KFC, you get it every day. So I think that guilty pleasures are great. And in fact, we shouldn't even feel guilty about them. But I think that if we're willing to put our own labor into securing them for ourselves, we'll have them, you know, on special occasions, which is fine.
Can small changes in American shopping and eating patterns make a difference collectively?
Without question. Look, you get to vote with your fork 3 times a day. That's a lot more votes than you have in any other realm of life. And we have already seen that getting that vote right, even once a day, makes a difference. And how do we know this? Well, we see the rise of these alternative markets. We see the rise of farmers markets, which are thriving. We see the rise of organic, which has been rising about 20%, increasing sales about 20% a year for 20 years. This is not the result of any kind of government programs or any kind of special incentives. That's just consumers voting with their forks, connecting with farmers who are offering a better product. So we've already seen a difference.
Jennifer Kincaid from San Francisco, California asks, I'm all for eating local, sustainable food, but I'm also a recent college grad living in a very expensive city. Outside of shopping at farmers markets or growing one's own food, how do you reconcile your food ethics and cost?
There is no question that to eat healthy and to eat with some sense of environmental responsibility costs more than to eat badly. I mean, the price of fast food is astounding, you know, how cheap it is. But you can break out of the fast food culture even on a budget if you're willing to put, if not, you know, put a little more time into your eating. It also might mean cooking 3 dinners on a Sunday and putting them in the freezer. I mean, things like that. And there is one key, though, to doing this. One word: beans.
Beans.
Very cheap, very delicious
beans.
form of protein.
If you could wave a wand and change only one thing about our food and agricultural system in America, what would it be?
I think the one thing that I would do is bring animals back onto farms. When you have an animal on a farm and you have a mixed farm, you don't have any waste because the animal's waste feeds the crops and the crops feed the animal, and it's this elegant solution. And what we did when we took animals off of farms was we neatly divided that solution into two big problems. And those problems are a fertility deficit on the farm, since there's no manure, and therefore they need to use nitrogen fertilizer, and a pollution problem on the feedlot, where that waste, which would be a blessing on a farm, becomes a source of pollution. So if we can get animals back onto farms, we will win in so many different ways.
What do you think about the adage, it's not the food we eat, it's our eating habits?
Well, I think he's onto something. You know, we've all heard about the French paradox, this population that can eat all this, you know, supposedly lethal saturated fat and lots of wine and, you know, foie gras and very, very rich foods, but nevertheless is somewhat healthier than we are. We think an intense food experience is getting stuffed. They think an intense food experience is having a little bit of something truly delicious. So it may well be that what we eat doesn't matter as much as how we eat it. Are we eating alone? Are we eating at tables with other people? Are we snacking? Are we eating, real meals? All these things may turn out to matter a lot to our health. The French don't stress over food. And one of the things I hope with this book is to help people relax a little bit about food, and that it's not so complex, as long as you're eating real food.
This makes me want to run out and have a nice French meal with lots of wine.
Nice place right down the street.
Okay. Well, Michael, that's fascinating. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Tim.
No, it's great.